Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the April meeting of the Cowcatcher Division. We have a great clinic for you tonight, or today. We've got Joe Fugate doing a clinic on Make It Run Like a Dream, so we'll see that later on this morning. I want to thank David Crimpton and the Texas Western for letting us use their facility. And David, do you have anything to say?
Sure. Just real quickly, when you came in the front door, if you did not sign in, please sign in when we take a break. We need a good head count on the attendance today. How many are here for the first time? Anybody here for the first time ever? Okay, Mr. Cowles, thank you. It's good to see that you're here again. We welcome you out to the Texas Western. Please take time after the meeting to walk around the layout. A lot is changing all over the layout. We're into that phase where every week it seems like it looks different. Landscaping goes pretty fast. Buildings are going up. Development is happening. We're really pleased with our progress. And Trapper, do we have memberships available? He's not here. Terry, do we have memberships available? We do have memberships available. So see me or see Trapper or see Terry, and we'll be glad to get you started. All right, that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, I want to announce a couple of changes that we've made to the leadership team too. I want to introduce Chris Gargalino.
That's it.
Gargalino, Chris Gargalino. He's assumed the responsibility of the communications coordinator. And
That's worthy of applause.
Yeah. Chris, introduce yourself and tell the group a little bit about you.
So my name is Chris Gargalino. I've been modeling since 1999. I took a 20-year hiatus, and now I am back modeling in scale. My location is Salida over Marshall Pass into Sargents in Colorado. I have a background in marketing, software, video, and photography, and I was asked to help out with the communications in the mail system that is being used to go out to everybody. So if you're getting communications from the division and they're either wrong, or you're getting bounced emails, or you're not getting the emails you're supposed to be getting each week, then I'm the guy that you need to contact, and we will get you figured out pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you. There's another change on the leadership team. Mike Mackey has assumed the responsibility of the Achievement Program Manager. And I don't think Mike's here yet. He'll probably be in a little while, but I don't think Mike needs any introduction to this group.
Just introduction. Maybe an explanation.
Well, Daryl, you know, there's some things don't have explanations, you know? You just never know.
The exception that proves the rule.
Yes. Okay, and David Grind, you want to give everybody a treasurer's report, please?
Hang on.
Oh, he's got his glasses on, so this is serious.
It is, yeah.
Serious stuff.
A lot of detail.
All right. We have no money. How much the trip? Thank you for the pickup trip. March opening balance was $3,902. We had no receipts. We had expenditures of $148. Our ending balance is $3,754. Normally there would be a receipt, but I have the cash, but I didn't have the ability to put it in the bank, but now I do. So this month, that March's receipts will be in April. So I'm already cooking the books. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for giving everybody a good warm fuzzy about how well our money's being taken care of.
Got the books on simmer, do you?
And speaking of money, I want to remind everybody, there's a kitty back there for refreshments. Please feed the kitty. We always, we try to break even on the refreshments, and the last couple of months, we've been running a little bit of a deficit. I want to bring something up that I think is pretty pertinent. And I want to remind everybody to take a look at their NMRA magazine this month. because there's a great article in there about, it's called, the title of the article is Track Dirt Science, and it's by Paul Welsh. And he goes through a very detailed explanation of how dirt accumulates on your track and what you can do to mitigate that situation. And I found it to be very useful, and it'll tie nicely into our clinic by Joe, where you're trying to make your layout run better and smoother all the time. I'd also like to ask, do we have any, and I know David kind of brought it up, but I want to ask one more time, do we have any visitors or new members to the meeting today? Any visitors or new members? Okay, good, thank you. We'll move on. I want to make a couple of announcements in the region. We have we got a new Bronzeville train show coming up next weekend, the 15th and 16th of April. You can check the website for more, the Cowcatcher Division website for more details. There's also an Austin train show coming up in early May 6th and 7th. That too is on the website. And there's another train show coming up in end of May in Jefferson called the Historic Jefferson Train Show. And Jefferson, if you haven't been there, is a great little town. They got good B&Bs, good restaurants, and it's well worth the trip to see the layout. So keep that in mind, and all that information is on the cowcatcherdivision.org website. Question?
That's the R.D. Moses layout that we all knew in the VFW area. R.D. Moses built the layout that was available, that could be seen at the house there in Fort Worth for many, many, many years. And after his passing, the Jefferson group got it, and it is much, much, much better the way it's presented there, because Mr. Moses had it, it was all kind of choppy, chopped up, and different kind of rooms. So the presentation with the HO scale layout is fabulous there in Jefferson. So that's where, I mean, even if it's not even if you're going into Shreveport to have fun there one weekend, be sure to stop off at Jefferson. Yes. I thought there was someone that asked me a question, but looking at the layout in Jefferson is really worth a lot.
Yeah, Jefferson's a cute little town anyways. There's a lot of great places to go there. So it'd be a fun trip for you and your spouse or you and your significant other.
Okay, one thing I'm gonna say right now, when I'm back here talking, get everybody signed in, you gotta remember, I'm talking to a bunch of old people. So, you know, like, I just wanna cover myself here, so I don't wanna get.
Sure, you're saying I need to talk louder? Is that what you're saying?
I think he said he's old.
Yeah, I think I heard that too. I'll try to shout this out. We have, there's been several improvements and changes to the 2023 Texas Express website in the last couple of days. So clinic schedules on there, rail tours, non-rail tours are on there now. So please check the website and sign up for the various clinics and rail tours and anything else you want to take part of. I want to remind everybody, the sooner you sign up or register for the convention, the priority, you have a priority as far as clinics go and things like that. Question?
That's actually a perfect segue. I've got two questions. This fall will be my first convention for NMRA. So A, are the tours and site visits cost extra on top of the convention?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
The fare is indicated on the website.
Okay. And then all but one or two. Okay, so I need to budget extra for excursions and whatnot.
Yes.
And then secondly, generally speaking, at what point in time do I say to myself, I need to get this booked, otherwise the slot's gonna be gone?
Now,
Okay.
Yesterday.
yeah,
Okay.
because they fill up. And the other thing is, we have the rail crew captain here, and I think he's gonna make an announcement about if you run a bus, you can wait till later on. Oh, you want me to delay that? Save the best for last? Is that what you're saying? Huh? Okay. Well, with that, Ken, why don't you speak up, talk up?
Thank
And
you.
make sure you talk loud enough so that the deaf person over in the corner can hear you.
All you people realize that the bigger you want in 53 makes money off of that. We make several $1,000s each division on these conventions. So we need a lot of volunteers for a lot of jobs. Okay, Dave Compton where is he here? Who's Dave? He's the volunteer coordinator. So for any other thing, contact him.
If you want to volunteer to do a job, let me know and we'll try to plug you in where you want to be.
Now, the other thing is, every tour needs a bus captain. Without a bus captain, the tour doesn't go. So right now, I need people to volunteer for that job. Why they have it, it's not taken yet. We have the Saginaw Industrial Tour. I'll take Saginaw. Okay, that takes that one. Okay. The Historic Stations Tour, which is the Dallas Station, Fort Worth, and the TMP.
Do we need a bus captain for that since we have our
Yes,
historian?
Yes, you still need a bus captain, because he's responsible to make sure it's on the bus, off the bus, it's on, you know. Are you going to be a historian on that?
No, I found the historian. I know who he
There's
is.
a historian on there, but you want a bus captain who's responsible for the people, and you don't have to worry about that. So, are you gonna take that? No? Okay.
I got other commitments.
I still need that one then. Okay. We have general interest tour. Except for Kristen, who did those, no one else has signed for those. I need 8 bus captains on general tour. I also have 4 layout tours. And I need 3 more for the layout tour. Fortunately, my office over there is taking one of them right there. Right here and say I'm a victim. So we need 3 more people to do those layout tours.
Jared, you can get a layout tour in.
I'm doing Wednesday. You know that, right? No, I can't get a bus captain.
Are you
No,
gonna do it?
I'm delivering the lunches. No, no.
Oh, yeah. That's more important. Anyway, so if you want to volunteer, please see me after the present, or during our break, so I can sign you up and give you an email and telephone and all that. Thank you.
Okay, so nothing else, Ken? You're good? Trapper heard you, right?
We're still third in this, in membership, we're third, all the divisions.
Yes,
Houston is first, Dallas is second, we're third. We're close to
okay, we're getting close. Joe?
If I may say, if you haven't registered for the national convention yet, prices go up at the end of June. Register now, save some money. Plus, as Dick has indicated, the sooner you register, end of June, June 30th. As Dick indicated, the sooner that you register, the sooner I'll be sending you a notice reminding you about all of the clinics and tours that are available. Okay, today I'm sending out a notice to 100 people. You have the inside scoop. Before they know, I'm telling you, you can go on the website, just like Dick said, and sign up for these additional tours, but you must be registered for the convention to do it. So if you've been thinking about it, this is a great time to do it because all tours seating is limited. Thanks, sir.
Okay, let's move on into our AP program, our awards and AP talk, conducted by Mr. Dwayne Richardson. Let's give him a big hand.
Oh, please. Thank you. Yeah, all right. Yeah, yeah. I have not received our certificates from National yet for this month, but Cole back here in the back, Cole will be getting his volunteer. I hope to have that next month.
Way to go, Cole.
So we've had a couple folks submit some paperwork. I know there's still some folks looking around the room that I know could qualify for several things. I was just telling the guys I don't have your cert yet from National. It's in the mail. So we'll get it to you next month. One of the things that I talked about in January, and I kind of got sidetracked. I actually just plumb forgot in February. And then I wasn't here last month because I was down in Houston teaching a class. So I'm going to do a little catch up here. we talked in January about covering different aspects of the AP, and I want to cover a couple of them. Is Dr. Ross here?
Not
Not seen him come in yet.
He usually gets here a little bit late.
Okay. Well, he's the other half of this speech, so we may have to do part of it when he gets here.
You want to wait just to lay this and we'll move on to something else?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do that and give him a chance to get in.
Okay, let's move into question. Let's talk to Ken. You were just talking, and I asked you if you had anything else, and you said no, and now you're raising your hand again. What's going on? Okay, go ahead.
Slam for bus captain, your fee will be returned. So you'll actually get to go on the tour first.
Okay, that probably is an important thing that you left out.
Yeah, that's why I raised my hand.
Okay, so let's go into a question and answer period of time, and I want to. This is a chance if you're having problems with what's working on your layout, what isn't working on your layout, to raise a question, and you've got a room full of people that have a lot of knowledge. They may be able to help you out. So who's got an issue with their what's working and on what's not working on your layout? What are you having problems with? David.
I've got a question about glues. Styrene to styrene. I've used Bondine, which is the Plastrut brand. Sometimes you get a good stick, sometimes you don't. I remember in the old days when you wiped it, man, this thing was welded together. So they must have changed formulas or watered it down some. What do you use for styrene to styrene?
Testers.
Testers?
Looks like a jar.
Okay, testers is a good one. Okay, second question.
You got another
Well, you
answer?
got
Mike?
another answer over here.
There's several other options.
Mike?
Yeah.
Can
I
I?
use a product that I get at Hobby Lobby called Flexifile Plastibond.
He had good ventilation, MEK.
Okay, yeah.
Don't
the-
get straight MEK at Home Depot.
Yeah,
Buy the stuff that's thinned down for modeling.
The Bondine by Plastruct has MEK in there, but it's probably very watered down.
Yes.
And the MEK is nasty.
Yeah.
Also, when you're working
Yeah,
with.
there's another answer right
Yes, sir?
here.
I get a product called, it's in a yellow tube flex glue or something. I use it for a lot of things. I actually used it on a steam locomotive, metal to metal. I use it on, the good thing about it is it hardens, but not sufficiently like wood glue or something. So you can bond it, you can put it on, put it together, separate it, let it evaporate, put it together, and it gets a 90% bond. You have a hard time, but you take a screwdriver on these two pieces of plastic, you can pull it apart. I actually use it to hold switch machines on my thing.
Now,
It
it's
is
called
that strong.
Flexibond.
It's,
Where did you get it?
no. I get it at Hobby. My wife orders it from Amazon because it's cheaper. But what's it called? I will let you know when I can't remember.
10X is another good one if you can get your hands on it.
Okay.
The nice thing with 10X is even if you've painted the model and something happens and it comes apart, and you've already got paint on it,
Yeah.
the 10X will actually seep through the paint and bond it.
Is that the 10X7R?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also Fowler makes a really good one.
Okay.
Another option too that I know a lot of modelers up in KC turned me on to, and I've had good luck with it. Actually take your bottle of styrene bond and put a couple of scrap pieces of styrene in it and just let it dissolve. And actually it creates it as a bit of a filler as well.
Huh, okay. David, did you have your hand up?
I did, but I don't remember why.
I was gonna, everybody keeps talking about 10X,
Yeah.
and 10X has been off the market for a while.
Well, that's what.
But they supposedly are starting to bring it back, but Micromark has a product that is the exact same formula,
Okay.
and they call it the same stuff. That's their name, the same stuff.
It's the same stuff as the name of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the same stuff
All
as,
right.
As the
10X.
10X7R.
Good feedback on the styrene. Now, question 2, and I'm done.
Sir, it's called Quick Grip.
Quick grip.
Quick
Okay.
grip, and it doesn't destroy the plastic. You can actually use a knife to peel it off if you do, but it's very, very strong. I've used it on a lot of things.
half my layout is quick grip. I mean, it
Okay.
really holds.
Okay. I use, for my ACC, I use a Loctite. I use a real thin one for real thin joints, and then I use the gel for bigger areas. Are all ACCs created equal? Is one ACC as good as the next ACC, or are there better ACCs? And what I've noticed with the Loctite, it takes sometimes, even with a kicker, sometimes it'll break loose on you if you don't watch it. So ACCs, you have some recommendation. Are they all created equal?
I was speaking to Loctite this week and about this locomotive, this French locomotive I had, and I used the MSS, which is it's the lightest bond, but it sticks pretty well, okay? But they make different levels of that kind of stuff, so you can get almost anything you want with Loctite. And so, but the quick grip solved it just as well.
And that other glue you were saying that your wife told me about?
It's quick grip. You can
Quick
get
grip.
it. Yeah.
I'm making notes.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, CAs are different, like you said, they come in different bonding strengths. And
They're not.
you just flip the thing over and read through it and see what kind of gripping power the thing has.
Okay.
If you ask me quick, I'll remember my question.
I'll ask you.
Okay, as I recall,
Time to go. It's full.
as I recall, CAA glues are not flexible.
Correct.
You can't put it on stuff that's gonna bend.
Yeah.
Okay, because it'll break apart.
Yeah.
So, you remember that.
Try
You
to
can't-
use it on
don't-
joints that are under a load.
yeah, don't, yeah, you can't put a load on it, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, yeah.
The thing to keep in mind with a lot of glues is it's the glue sinking into the surfaces and drying that's actually holding the stuff together. When you're doing plastics, you're either melting them and welding them together that way, or if you're using CA actually creates its joint by bonding the oxygen between the two parts to hold it together. And it tends to create a very brittle joint. We use them a lot in woodworking. If I've got a corner, a miter corner that I'm trying to put clamping pressure on, you can take 2 blocks and CA them to the sides of it, and then put a regular clamp across it, squeeze the clamp, let that glue joint dry. Then you walk up and just pop them with a hammer, and those CA blocks just snap right off. It does not have much holding power at all, depending on the type you get. Now there are some, what's the guy with the Gorilla Glues and all that kind of stuff. You'll see the Flex Feel guy. Phil Finn with Flex Feel, that's the guy. They've got a new one where they're using some sort of CA, and they pick up like 6 tons with it or something like that. So it's all about the bonding. You just got to turn the package over and read through it. Get online, read through their various ones. Loctite makes several different ones. 3M makes several different ones. There's a bunch of them out there that you can pick from. I use the Loctite stuff myself.
Okay.
And I like it quite a bit.
Just from Home Depot and Lowe's?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've been using.
Starbond makes another that's really good, a little more pricey, but you've got to order it online. They don't carry it in the store.
Yeah.
The thing about it is you got to learn there are a number of different glues, adhesives that work for different things. So you got to have an inventory in your shelf, which one you're going to use. As an example, years ago, the mirror came off the windshield on my pickup, and I bought a package deal at the auto parts store, which basically included CA in it. I stuck it up there with CA, and 24 hours later, it fell off. Instead, I went with 5-minute epoxy, which nobody has mentioned this morning, but 5-minute epoxy glued that mirror up, and it's been there for 20 years.
Yeah, epoxy's good.
So 5-minute epoxy is a very important use.
But if you use epoxy in your kitchen, your wife will hate you forever. Because that stuff stinks and just don't go away.
Yeah, my wife hates me.
Well,
It's the female voice in the room, yep.
When you use just enough to stir it with your blade of your X-Acto knife, you're not going to get much odor out of it.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, anybody else having trouble with modeling? Any other issues? You guys are all got AP certificates in modeling, huh? Because nobody's got any.
Where's the paperwork?
Give the paperwork to Dwayne, please. Okay, no more questions. Okay, you want to go back to AP talk?
Is Dr. Ross here?
No.
Okay.
But the AP manager did show up. You did see that, didn't you?
Yeah, I saw him come slinking into the room late.
I saw that too. Okay, so let's move on to, how about tips and tricks? Dwayne, do you have a tip and trick for us today?
Somebody told you that.
Well, this young man here
Yeah,
has
I
got.
And I don't know if how many of y'all are on the interchange. Let's see a show of hand. I had Speed create a new group form on the interchange that is for tips and tricks. And so it's for basically what we're talking about here. And so I have a major problem that I don't know if a lot of y'all do, that when you're using the 10X7R, you're working on your tabletop and it winds up like that. That's water, don't worry.
It's worse than that on it.
And you're like, how do I stop this? How do I stop that spill when that puppy goes over? Well,
Baking soda on it.
well, no, I came up with what I think is a fairly unique or novel solution. Y'all ever eat, the Hillshire Farms, they got turkey and roast beef and all this other stuff. Well, the lid's not that important, but the bottom is. Because all of y'all have maybe a piece of the pink foam laying around that's just a little square, right? Well, cut yourself a hole in it, put it in there, and you've got a firm base that will not tip over, okay? It also gives you a great little spot to put the brush that you were using on it, or even the knife, okay? Well, another one that I saw when I was going through, when I finally joined Facebook, a guy was complaining about his microsaw always falling over. Why not put them in one of those two?
There you go.
You put both of them in there, and you can keep the brush separate for which ones you want to use. And so it separates out which of the different types you're using. So this was a tips and trick that I put out onto the interchange. So if you guys want to go out and look at that, it's the exact same canisters, but that's something to keep you from spilling. Got a paper towel. Okay.
Yeah, for a long time, guys,
It's
we
just
took a
water.
sponge and cut a hole in it and set it down in that and keep it from chipping over, but the pink foam works a lot better.
Okay, Eric, thank you very much. Great trip, a great tip. Go ahead, Wayne.
For years, I have tried avoiding building water tanks. Not because I couldn't build one, just because I was never happy with getting some of the staining on it that I would really like to have. Those of you who know my modeling, I tend to have things looking a little more run down than most. And I got to working on a project that I'll go through and show and tell here, but I'll start some of it now. When I was working on the water tank, I had bought, and I think it's a Bragdon weathering powder. It might be AIM, but I'm pretty sure it's Bragdon, but it's a white lime mortar is what they call it. And it has a nice brick mortar, whitish gray color to it. So when I started working on this water tank, I had stained the upper portion a lighter color, the bottom where it would be wet most of the time a slightly darker color. And then typically on a water tank like that, you'll see this white buildup where the water line typically usually is. I don't know if it's calcium or lime or whatever's in the water kind of thing, but it usually get this white buildup. And I've just never been real happy with the results that I've gotten off of it until now. I tried that lime white mortar, and I started up where the that demarcation line is, just below it, and put it on straight there with a brush, scrubbed it in a little bit, and then drug it straight down the board. And I did it board by board all the way around the tank. And then I felt that the bottom didn't have too much of a white haze to it. So I took my bottle of stain, shook it up, so I had some on the lid, took the lid off, laid the lid down, and then took my paintbrush and just dabbed it straight down into the, not enough to do this, but just get the tips of the bristles wet. and then came in and stippled it back board by board, almost to that demarcation line. So I left a starker white line around it, and I'm pretty happy with the way this one turned out. So it's if you're looking for something along those lines, Bragdon weathering powders.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Dwayne. So, how about show and tell? Let's move into show and tell while we're waiting for Dr. Ross to show up.
He's here now.
Oh, he is here now? Okay.
Cool.
Go ahead, Dwayne.
All right, in that case, back to the AP.
You have to applaud again?
No.
No.
Didn't want you to applaud the first time. So let's do a little catch up here. We started off talking about volunteer back in January. The other two pieces that are part of that section of it, the AP's 11 categories, and it's divided into 4 groups, okay? That particular group is called Service to the Hobby, and the other two pieces of that are author and official, and they are exactly what they sound like they are. If you're elected to a position within the LSR or the NMRA at national level, you are earning points towards official, depending on what office you hold as to how long you have to hold it. For example, Mr. Brandon here is going to need to be reelected a time or two to get his. You have to hold a division office as division director for 3 years. If you're the region president, you only have to hold it for 2 years. So, and you only need the division director. It's a 2-year term, and you have to have it twice because you need 3 years as that division director, but only 2 as the LSR if you join as a president, VP, and maybe treasurer. I'd have to double check that one. So very simple. You got to get elected to a position to earn official. That's stuff you do. If Dick appoints you to a job, that's volunteer. It's not anything you've been elected to. Things like that. Being a president of a club doesn't count either. You've got to be elected to a NMRA position of some sort. Author is also the last piece, also in that group. It's the last piece of service to the hobby. And it's just what it says. It's writing articles, it's creating a website, it's putting things out there to teach others how to do what we do. Author is very straightforward and pretty easy to do. The trick being is what you write. I had a gentleman here who submitted some articles to me, and unfortunately some of them couldn't count because they were his personal recollections of riding passenger trains when he was a kid and eating in the dining car and things like that. And it didn't have anything that could be used for modeling. So National turned that down. What they're really gearing towards is here's how the Katy ran stock trains, or here's how the B&O ran this kind of train, or the Frisco ran that kind of train, or here's how I built this boxcar or this house, things to that effect. Your website can be up to half of the required points. A page is how they count this kind of thing. 1,200 words of text is a page. Photographs count towards that as well. You can claim down to a quarter of a page in photographs and things like that. So basic rule of thumb is if you write an article and it gets published somewhere, whatever prints on a page is a good way of looking at it. A lot of things are going to online now. Magazines or things that started off with a true editor and were once in print still count as print. And the reason that's important is you can only have half of your points via electronic publication. And that was really put in place because they didn't want somebody just to create a website, spin up a bunch of information, and poof, I've got author in half an hour's time. They wanted to kind of limit that down a little bit. So things, and I believe the way they've got it now is things where it is an online publication only, but it has a full-time editor and that sort of thing. And I think that is also treated as print. I can double check that if you're interested. So the marker lamp is one of the best ways. Y'all have got your own division newsletter.
Right.
So if you think about it from typically, when you do something at the division level, it's this many points. You do it at the region, it's that many points. You do it at national, it's that many points. Same thing kind of works here. If you're writing for a division newsletter, you get like a point a page. If you go to the regional, you get 2. You go to national, you get more. You get 3. So, and that's all based on circulation numbers as well. So once you get outside of an NMRA publication, it's all about the circulation rates. So if you write an article for the Cowcatcher Roundup, for example, and you give that off to Tim and Tim prints it, his circulation numbers are now high enough, he's considered a regional publication. So you can get 2 points per page. The marker lamp is always looking for input. In fact, he's got a deadline coming up at the end of the month, and he is looking for content. Right now, he popped out an email the other day. He has 1 article for the marker lamp so far. So if you're looking for the marker lamps, the NMRA, the LSR's regional publication. Yeah. So if you've got an article you can whip up real quick, I'm sure they would love to have it. So that gets you through author, and it gets you through volunteer and official. So that's all the service to the hobby. Now that gets us caught up to this month. This month, we're going to switch things up a bit. And as we move along, I want to try to get different modelers who have earned different certificates to come up and speak to them a bit. So I've asked Dr. Ross to speak about cars. Cars is part of the railroad equipment category. You have to have either cars or motive power out of that category. And most people go with cars because it is infinitely easier to do. But we will talk about cars this month. Dr. Ross?
Yeah, it's, thank you for asking me. It's, when you think about the MMR stuff, that you build scenery, you're building scenery, but when you think about cars, you have to say, gosh, this is a challenge. Where do I go? Where do I even start? And so I'm going to just, in 5 minutes, try to tell you how I approach this and see how, if it can give you an idea. The number one is pick a prototype. I particularly like working in wood, so I looked at wood cars, but likewise you can go to styrene or metal. Where do you look for plans for cars or things to build? The old model railroaders and RMCs and so on had plans. You can look at them. Look at car builder cyclopedias. They're all available online now. You can even, as I've told people, buy a kit, buy an old Silver Street kit or one of those and just put it aside and duplicate it by scratch. The first criteria is, of course, construction, and that's in terms of quality and workmanship. And I wanted to show you some ways that you can, some of the things you can do to improve construction. And number one is keeping things square. And you keep things square by creating a plan. You can copy it off the internet or off the book and build your model right over a plan with, for example, T-pins. And you use jigs. I brought jigs along just to show you, I'll leave them up here, some of the things that you can do to facilitate construction. These are jigs. That's a flat car. Start with a flat car, as Dwayne has said multiple times. That's easy, but there's some nails in the plan to help you form the truss rods. And
sway back.
Yeah, or you could do it sway back, yeah, which like John Allen did.
Yes, sir.
Here is again a plan with holes cut at the stake pocket pin location. So you put that over your piece of wood, and you're going to build your car that way. What you want to do is, avoid having just a plain box, sheet of wood. That is the way that the old Silver Street cars came, for example. If you're copying a kit, plan on adding the framing underneath it. And if you don't have a prototype available, use reasonable Imagineering. I left back there, I've got a folder with all the paperwork for each car that I built, and one of them was limited to a set of what do you call press-on dry transfers. And I searched and searched and searched, could not find a plan for that car, but I effectively Imagineered it and had to do my own plan. Number two is detail. Remember, you're trying to increase complexity of the model intentionally. Always add the brake gear. When I was a little tyke and built thought I was so proud that I built a pickle car and hauled it off to the division meeting living up in Ohio there. And on the way back, I was counseled by Bob Bast, who was the the one NMRA national employee maintained the mailing list, that it didn't score very high because it was no underbody detail. Always add that. And it's just a lot of pieces put together. It's doable in any scale. There are a lot of details that you can add. For example, steps. You can buy commercial steps, or you can take a strip of brass and bend it, put a couple divots in the ends, drill some holes, put some nut bolt washer castings in, and you've got a step that's scratch built that raises your score considerably and your complexity. If the step has multiple things, that's the ideal way to learn a little soldering. It's very simple soldering to build a step. Conformity, keep a notebook as you go along with the plans, and maybe even take a picture with your phone and show how you've built you've built it. Finish and lettering. Brand new things, of course, think ahead. Brand new things don't look as realistic as something that's weathered. When I was also little, I was at a NMRA meeting or a club, and somebody brought in a beautiful model of a trestle, a California logging trestle made of redwood, and he had cut it out of redwood itself. What score do you give it? It looks like it was built in that day, so he didn't really score high on weathering. Avoid heavy paints, which obscure all the grains and the detail. I prefer stains, and then pan pastels or weathering powders. Dwayne is always telling you, and I'm always learning. Dull the decal lettering. You can take the same color you've used for the car, thin it out, overspray it, barely visible, but it dulls your lettering. And here again, on weathering, remember that weathering, just like bushes in scenery cover up all sorts of defects, weathering covers up all sorts of errors in your cars. If your lettering is not necessarily perfect, put some oil on it, spill some oil on it. The judges are not that smart, I promise you. And finally, scratch building. Plan ahead. It's not that difficult a project. You can do it. If you've got the underframe of a car, you can go out and buy strip wood to any size you want, or you can take a block of wood and cut it down. And look what that does to your scratch building score. So you're a ½ inch off. It doesn't make any difference. It looks beautiful, and you've done it yourself. Cut your own timbers for the underframes, the sills, the center sills, and the decking. Again, steps are an example of things you can scratch build, and other examples, things that you can buy parts for, but you can just as easily scratch build, are things like window frames, hinges. You can make hinges out of a piece of, we're talking small stuff, piece of paper embossed with some bolt holes, ventilators, and so on. In summary, you say, gosh, I got to build a car. Where in the world do I begin? It's really not that complex. Just pick up a prototype, start it, do it step by step, and you'll get there.
Yeah. Touching on what he mentioned before, as we talked about, the flat car is the backbone of everything. If you can build a flat car, you can build anything else. It's that simple. Perfect. Get it out of there. The jigs.
Let me mention something.
Sure.
AP requires 12 cars, and I think 6 of them have to be scratched.
I was getting to that.
Okay. So what I was going to say was, you don't have to do all different ones. You can mass produce 6 or 8 of exactly the same car and get credit for each and every one of them.
Yeah, the way they've got it structured around in here is you've got to have 4 different car types out of the required number of cars. According to our handy dandy achievement program, if you go out to nmra.org, you go under the education section and it'll pop it up in there. You can go to the AP achievement program. It will pull this up, and then down at the bottom, if you're doing this on your phone, will be the categories. And this will walk you through where everything is. So if you look at cars, cars will tell you in here that you have to build 4 different car types. One of them has to be something found in a regularly scheduled passenger train. That does not mean a passenger car is what they're asking you to build. It can be. It can also be a baggage car. It could be a combine. It could be an RPO. It could be an express reefer. It could be a drover's caboose. There's a lot of options there besides a passenger coach. So keep that one in mind. You have to build under cars is you've got to build 8 operable cars. 4 of them have to be built from scratch. The other 4 can be kits, and you just super detail. You can scratch all 8 if you want to. I know a lot of guys that have, just because they wanted the challenge. If you're going to super detail something, definitely do yourself a favor and get one of the old kits, the old Silver Streaks or something along those lines. Because, the old Ambroids and things, because there's just not that much there. And if you think you're going to grab some new AccuRail and you're going to cut it up and put a bunch of detail parts on it, you're probably not going to be able to put enough on it to make it super detailed. So I would go with one of the older kits, and at that point you're scratch building anyways, because those things are basically a box of sticks. But yes, there are 8 cars required. 4 have to be scratched. 4 don't have to be judged, but they need to be super detailed and basically of like quality.
Got a question. Is 3D printing considered a scratch build?
If you do the drawings, it's scratch built.
If you do the drawing?
If you just download the drawings from somebody else and you print it, it is not scratch built.
Okay, so when you submit the 3D prints, you got to submit the drawing.
It would, yes, I would.
Okay,
I would prefer that. Yeah.
Okay.
Same goes for laser work. If you are cutting things on the laser, as long as you did the drawings, and then it's fine. Used to be, because I blazed the trail on this one for y'all. If you had the laser, you had to run it yourself. So I had friends who would come over, they would do their own drawings, and I would invite them over and go, okay, put it in here. Yep, load it up. Okay. Push this, push that, push this, hit print. All right, now put your wood in here, do this, do this, do this. Now press the little green magic button that says go. Congratulations, you've now run the laser. So it would count as a scratch built part. Now with the advent of places like Shapeways and some of these 3D printing services that they have out there, they have revised the rules so that you can have them cut or printed by somebody else as long as they don't have to manipulate the drawings. So if you draw them and you want to send them up to Shapeways and have them bulk print the things or whatever, that's fine. Mr. Ogden, sir.
Yes, how many points would I expect to lose off of bringing in a scratch built car with a fishy brake gear and a coupler?
Okay, so you're not expected to make your own trucks, couplers, brake rigging. Those are all exempt parts. You will lose points if you don't have them on there, but you will. They don't count against you. And this is where a flat car like what he's got right here and what we built during our clinic classes. Okay, this is where you can kind of go sideways a little bit, because if you make the car from scratch, you do all the woodworking portion of the car from scratch. Okay, you've got 2 pieces for the center sills, 2 intermediate sills, 2 outers, so that's 8 pieces. You've got the 2 end beams, that's 10. You've got 65 or 70 deck boards. To count as scratch built, the number of parts has to be 90% of the car's parts have to be made from scratch, not counting the exempt parts. Now, by the time you throw 10 or 12 or more stake pockets on the side of that and 4 stirrup steps and some of the things that aren't exempt, you've now got to have 200 or 300 parts on a flat car to get it to be scratch built. So when you're working towards the AP and you want that car to count as one of your scratches, you need to be thinking about making your own stake pockets. And they're real simple to do. You can make a jig like what he was doing. I've got one at the house that's a piece of brass with with 4 holes in it, and it's got a brass block soldered to it. And you just take your brass wire, run it up through the hole, run it over the brass, pull it down through the other hole, and pull it nice and tight. You get the nice bend. You pull another one up and over. You get a nice bend. I lift them back up. I slide a piece of 3x5 card in there. I put a little CA on it, pull it back down, let that dry, pull it back up, clip the wire off, make another one, and just move on down the line. Stirrup steps are real simple. A little piece of real thin brass strap. Grab them with your pliers, put a little half bend in it, bring it down 90-90, put another half bend end in it, drill a couple holes in it, mount your MBWs on it. MBWs are also an exempt part. So now you've made your stirrup steps for it as well.
So when did they go from 12 to 8?
It's always been 8.
But
It's 12 structures. It's always been 8 cars.
when I got mine, it was 12.
It's always been 8. Yeah, go back and look through the history of the AP. It's on the NMRA page. It's 12 structures, but it's always been 8 cars. So when you're working through there, again, half have to merit. So that's 87.5 points. And like we've talked about before, out of 125, that's 70%. So C- or better, you're in. Any questions? Yes, sir.
You get extra points if you pour your own metal and grow your own trees?
Yes. Al Booz used to say, when you do your write-up, you want to put it in there that I found a seed and I planted it in my yard and I watered it and I nurtured it and I watched it grow. And after so many years, I chopped it down and I dried the wood and I brought it in and I cut it down and I made my own strip wood. And partially in jest, but there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, we were just talking a minute ago and the guy says, you mentioned cutting your own wood. You can go down to any of the wood suppliers, Rockler and Woodcraft both carry basswood. You can buy you a block of basswood and sit down on your little micromark table saw and create more sawdust than you'd ever want. And you can come up with a handful of 2x4s with it. You can make your own strip wood if you want to. And if you do that, put it in your write-up because it's that extra step you took to make it more complex. You made it a harder build. If you have something that you find difficult in the build, write it down. The judges may not think it's all that hard. I mean, not trying to pat myself on the back. I've been doing this for 45 or 6 years now. And there are some things that I find to be very simple to do. And if I get your score sheet and I'm reading through it and I'm reading through I did this, I bent that way. Okay, no big deal. Well, what you may not understand, or what I may not know is you may have a tremor. And getting that thing perfectly straight was a real pain. Write that down. Write that down because it was harder for you to do something. I may not give you the consideration I need to if I don't know that. So if you find something difficult to do, put it in your write-up. I thought this part was really hard because, and jot it down. Judges should take that into account. They may not all do it, but they should. At any rate, any other questions? Cool. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dwayne, thank you very much. Dr. Ross, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ross.
Okay, before we go into show and tell, I want to just, Joe Fugate is on. Joe, I want to welcome you to the meeting. And we're going to go through one more section of our meeting called show and tell, and then we're going to take a break, and then I'll introduce you to your clinic. So, but thank you for joining us today. Show and tell. Does anybody got anything for show? Russell.
Yeah, I always say something.
Very good. Bring it on up.
This is my first scratch build. I got some blueprints out of a JV kit. It's called Austin Lumberyard. And I got the kit. I didn't like the way the materials they gave me, so I decided, well, I'm going to do my own. So the first thing I decided to do, this is actually the front of it here, is do a real cedar shingle roof with a cigar wrapper, cut each individual piece, and got probably 1,500 shingles on it. So after some therapy, I got it all put together and got the base. This model's only about 70% done, by the way. So I've got the roof kind of where I like it. I've got corrugated steel metal on it as well. Everybody always asks, how do you get them stuck and how do you stain them? Wipe them down with vinegar, and I use a Scotch Brite on the back of them. And I just put CA on them. They stick like they're stuck. They won't come off. Every room is finished out on the interior on this. This is going to be the repair shop for saw blade sharpening or general tool repair. It's detailed out with some rusty rail castings. Turned out pretty good. They're fun to paint, all the little bottles and jugs and tools. On the inside, can't see it over the light, but I've actually got a lumber rack in here with like trim wood stacked on it. I got a service counter, and then I've got another shelf in here with a bunch of materials and things on the inside. The ridge is a copper. I think copper, I use a scribe and kind of put my detail into it, then I anneal it. with the stove when my wife's not looking. Heat it up, cool it, heat it up, cool it. Kind of gives it a warm look. Now, there's no weathering really done on this. Some on the siding, but we're not there yet. Completed with it. And the roof panel, I got it where it wedges in.
Oh, look at that.
And on the ceilings in here, I made my own roof tins out of copper as well. So I've got roof tins. When you look up and go through the roof tins.
How long was the therapy?
How long have I got so far into this?
Ongoing.
A long time. I've got actual the hardwood floors are individual planks on the first and second floor. There's lighting, all the rooms are lit up with micro LEDs. There's lots of nuts, bolts, and washers on the beams, on the sliding doors. I got one folding door here because I didn't really like to resize some of the stuff on the drawings. It had a dormer up here I didn't like, and it wasn't sitting up on 4x4 or 8x these really. So I changed it up a little bit to kind of fit my layout. But I did a different technique on my siding, if you can really see it or not. But I stained it first, a dark stain. And I came back and really kind of dry brushed the white on, highlighting the areas that are lighter up underneath the eaves, and trying to show the weathering on it. I still got to do some powders and stuff on it to get some of the rust stains I want, get some of the dirt stains. We're getting there. Got my flashings on my roofing. I did use your trick with the sandpaper and get her level.
Yep.
Because one thing I learned about putting hardwood floors, when I glued it down on the very base, everything went like this. So I had to add some additional bracing to have it stained on it. You have here, here, and here. To get the twist out of it. What I did is I tried to work pretty good. I got as flat as I could with the weight on it and glued these pieces on. And I sprayed it lightly with some water, put a weight on top of it, let it sit for about 2 days. It still was a little bit, but not as bad. But you definitely see on the bottom of this, I sanded that dark the dickens out of it.
Yep.
But this is part of the layout we're doing. Black Hills, there's actually a company called Black Hills Lumber. Very, very similar to that building. This will have a lumber rack. This is for rail service here. Because I've still got all the beams and the trusses to put it in. I've got it made up, I just haven't put on yet. The train track will come through here, but also be the lumber rack sitting over here as well on this side. Where the train service would come in, they can load the lumber off of it and or materials or drop off stuff into the building itself. And then there would be a sawmill that I built, small sawmill that's going to be a part of this as well. So anyway, been fun.
Very cool.
Russell, just looking at it from back here, with a little fudge factor, you might can get 87.5.
I'm hoping, I was hoping for an 86.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where does the plumbing go? When have you gonna put the plumbing in?
Well, actually, I have not put in I got a wood burning stove that goes in all 3 rooms, which I've got those, but just haven't cut the holes, put it in place yet. There's a bit stack or 2 that's gonna go on here. And if you look down below, there's a toilet hidden somewhere.
Now, one thing I would say, you were talking about putting in some dirt and some more weathering chalks. You're already pretty dark.
Yeah.
So you want to be real careful about what you do to it.
It's just gonna be like around the windows, a little staining there.
Off the edges of the
And
sills.
then a little bit of rust coming off of the roof, a little bit, and a little bit come off the flashing. That would be about it.
Cool. Looking good, man.
It looks taking a brush corners, I take sandpaper and some of the worn edges were held on to, knocked into. Kind of the entrance is going into each area is going to beat up a little bit, so. I still got the dock to build yet, so that's going to be another, well, maybe next year I'll be done with that. It seems like it takes forever. I'm also right now in the middle, have multiple kits I do at one time. I've got an engine house I'm doing right now, about this big, which is a 9-scale models kit, which is pretty detailed, but not enough for me, so I'm actually adding all the timber frame, where they use 4x4 for framing. So I'm getting all the framing done, and I'm experienced in making windows. And the wood for the paintings.
Mhm.
I've got
Oh,
two
yeah.
windows done, I got about 10 hours of them. We're just trying to get the glue, I finally figured out how to get it glued in. Just actually taking a piece of acetate, building the frames on top of the acetate, just for to support it, and just taking thin CA, let it wick, spray it and hold it, and then come back and put them on the other side, and then take a PVA, and working in the joints. So far, pretty good.
Cool. Yeah, you gotta be careful with CA and acetate, 'cause they'll fog sometimes.
Well, the acetate's just there for support. Okay. It comes right off.
Oh, okay.
It's just, well, the kit comes with acetate, but it's got like the window pane on it. I'm not gonna use that. So I use that just for bracing to hold the window pane frame. So they don't buckle.
Interesting idea.
So Russell, how many hours do you have in this already? Just as an estimate.
100.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful model.
I work on it. This is, modeling for me is my decompression from work. Me and my wife, we go over there, we spend a couple of hours a evening just tinkering with something. And I got to a point where I'm kind of done with this right now. I come to the side and I started the engine out. Plus another car I got going on. I'm doing a Texan business car, which I'm actually building all the kitchen equipment for right now.
Very good. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you, Russell.
Now, Dwayne, do you want to talk about your?
Yeah. So Cole and I are working on a project for a friend of ours out in California. And one of the things we started off, it was going to be a fake meat packing plant. Yeah. I was going to say it was home of the knot dog, but we switched gears. So he's decided he'd rather have a distillery for that particular town. So we're switching gears a bit. Cole has started on the building. I'll let him talk to that part of it. My piece of it, though, is the water tank and boiler. So I started this on Monday, started playing around with it. I started off with a stick out of my yard, and I cut it down for the supports to hold the water tank up. And if you've ever tried doing that, it's real fun trying to get a stick that's going like that and get two parallel flat surfaces on it. It's a real trip. But finally, through a lot of trial and a lot of error, finally got 4 posts that I was happy with. One of them actually had the start of a branch on it, so I cut it off level at that, so I used it as one of the cantilevers. The whole idea of this is this needed to be very kludged together, very homegrown. Minimum wage guy went out there with a hammer and some nails that he straightened up after pulling them out of an orange crate kind of thing. So I'm really looking for really hardcore backwoodsy, really just junk, So I started off, I ordered a boiler casting from Shapeways. It's actually from a Shea boiler, and I sectioned an end off of it and got it down to where it was one dome and the smoke box, or the front end of the locomotive. And then I cut the top of the stack off and extended that with a couple of coffee stirrers that I had, stirring straws. And I got it up where it would reach up over the top of the roof. The rest of it's all board by board. The water tank itself is a cardboard tube that I had cut off and then glued 2x12s all the way around it, and got lucky that it was a full number, even number of boards, and I didn't have to fake in a short one somewhere. And then I did the staining on it like we talked about earlier. I wanted water in it, and I didn't want to pour a bunch of resin in it. So I took I took the tank before I started gluing the wood on it, and I set it down, and I edge glued a bunch of boards together, traced around that to create a disc that I cut out and glued that to the bottom of the tube. And then I laminated the sides around it. And then I'd made another disc out of styrene that I set on the top of the tube. And then I went back in and I painted that with a color called leaf green. And it was really bright. And tried mixing a little blue with it. Still wasn't getting it where I wanted it. And then this idea hit me. So I painted the rest of the water surface black, all but the very, very edge. And I took a little bit of that leaf green and a little bit of the black, mixed it together rather loosely. And then I came in and started stippling the surface from the green edge toward the center and left the center pretty much straight black. So it gives it some depth, but it gives it this moss and crud is growing on the top of the water, which for be used in meat packing, I thought was rather hilarious. And now it's going to be used for making either mezcal or tequila, which still is funny. So at any rate, I've left it nice and scummy. And then once I let that dry overnight, I came back in with some future floor polish and hit it with that so it would give it some sheen and give it a little bit of a glossy look for some wet. The sheet metal was done up by a friend of mine, and he sent me a big batch of it. I'd sent him some leftover tools that my dad had that I didn't need, a 4th, screwdriver and a 5th scale ruler and stuff like that. And he sent me back some sheet metal that he's actually making. He's made his own jig, and he's embossing it in some real heavy duty aluminum foil. And he's an artist by trade, and he rusted some of it up. And I told him, I said, I need some that's really beat up. And I had just enough of the leftovers of the beat up that I've used it under here. All of the under framing and everything underneath the little roof is all board by board, scale strip lumber and all that. The trusses are all hand built and everything. I have no idea how many parts are in it. There's probably 7 or 8 dozen pieces of individually hand split 15-inch firewood tucked in that bunker. All glued up and glued in. I'm working on it now. It all still comes apart. I've got a hole cut in the back of the back head for a firebox set of doors. I've got a hole cut in the bottom. I'm going to mount a flickering LED in it. I've got an ash pit underneath here. I've hand bent in wire an ash rake for it. If I can find the figure in the right pose, I'm going to stick that in its hand and have him raking out the ashes. The ash pit's going to get some fiber optic after I pour in some ash out of my barbecue, and have it feed down to an orange LED and have a few glowing embers in it, and then the flickering light in the firebox, of course. The only thing that'll be left, and now that I've got the building here, I'll start plotting and planning that part of it. I'm going to have to route in, because I've got it glued down to the base. I'll route this in and set it up here behind this middle building here, and then I'm going to run a plumbing pipe from the boiler into the building from there. It can plumb around to wherever they need it. But it's been a fun little project. Like I say, I started it on Monday, and just like he said, I get done with work and I want to decompress. I rotate the chair 90 degrees and I start modeling. And it's kind of gotten where the last couple of 3 months, after having not built anything in a couple of years, I don't get out of that chair much during the course of the day. Having a lot of fun with it right now, but yeah, it's been a fun project.
Wow.
So then my portion of it, of the building, I started with a block of pink foam, just about yay big, and I carved brick detail into that pink foam. I then molded it and poured, cast it in resin, so I had to bake the walls.
Can I have you move that bottle of hand sanitizer? We'll get a better shot from the camera. Thank you.
Can you put that on the main screen?
Yeah.
Can you put it on?
It's coming. That's why I needed him to move it. All right.
Okay. So I made my own walls out of resin off that mold, and then I covered the walls with drywall mud, plaster, and chipped out back the brick out for where it's falling off, and then stained all the drywall mud. After I painted the individual bricks in the cracks, I stained all the mud using watercolors. So the floor was stained with a watercolor, and all the walls were stained with watercolors, which I thought was an interesting deal, but it worked really well with the drywall mud. So then I lined the inside of the walls with printed brick detail. How's that?
Very good, Dwayne. Very good, Cole. Very good. Any more show and tell? Okay, so,
One more.
oh, wait, we've got one more? Okay, Jerry? Oh, sorry. Daryl?
I came up here and I watched Cole making a branches for the pine trees that he's making at home, and I thought, what kind of an idiot would sit and bend that much wire? And now I know. Yeah, I was looking in the mirror. So anyway, I'm needing some some oak trees and things for the logging area and just for the layout in general. This has been up out of 28 gauge soft copper wire. And this one is, I think, 15 pieces, 18 inches long, and then you fold it in half to get a base for it. And you end up sitting there twisting and stuff. This is probably 4 or 5 hours worth of work. Something like
4 or
that.
5?
Yeah. To take that down. Now what I do after that is these are then coated with a liquid latex rubber. Okay, so it actually has kind of a rubber feel. Liquitex makes it, and you can get it through Amazon or anybody like that. But you coat them down with Liquitex rubber and then give it a spray. This one was sprayed black first, and then it's been given some gray. I have a couple of mini Prince turkey vultures that are going to sit in there.
How did you coat it?
Just with a brush. Just took the brush and painted the larger limbs on it to see that. And now another way, because this is going to not be filled out with leaves, I will probably take and do some static grass on it, some real short static grass, and that will fill it out with and brush some of the limbs with the glue, and then do a short static grass on it, and that will give you the really, really small limbs that you would see in a dead tree. Whereas in the larger trees that are filled out, this is one here. This one has, you see all the limb structure underneath down there. These make pretty good representations of oak trees, and once your glues are dry and your adhesive, I use a spray adhesive for a great deal of it, they're pretty durable. But now if you mash one clump, that's where it stays. It doesn't spring back once you get it done like this. But these are covered with a fine background foam first, and then I use some of the knock cut leaves to give it the more leaf effect. And on the very top, then I put a little lighter color to represent the leaves that are up in the sunshine. But these, this one would be one of the larger oak trees around, but it has the sunlight on the top of the leaves as well. This one was coated with the liquid latex rubber. I'm going to experiment on a couple of these. I have some sculpting paste that I've seen used, and I'm going to try doing the trunks with some sculpting paste and be actually able to sculpt in the bark so that you actually get a bark look. Now, obviously, that would be for a foreground tree. Anything in the background, you'd never see it. So you don't really need to do that on a background tree.
So Daryl, you do put a little ground foam on there?
I put a little bit first. First thing I do, and it's easier to see on this one, is I have a little poly foam or the mesh polyfiber, and I pull that out pretty thin. It's really thin, and I'm probably going to start pulling it a little thinner than this, and cut them out in little chunks and glue each one of those chunks onto a limb branch out here. So you're going to glue all of those to all over the branch, and then you'll come back in and hit it with a glue spray, sprinkle a little ground foam on it, and then let that set for a minute, and then come back in and I'll put a little dark leaf, and then I'll spray it again and put a little lighter colored leaf on it to give it a highlight. But you turn out a pretty decent looking oak tree.
What did you spray with? What kind of?
I'm just using just some of the rattle can adhesive, like 3M77. Now I attached the polyfiber with Elmer's, just white glue. Just brush that limb with white glue and stuck that little polyfiber on there. And after that dried, then you're pretty much set.
The fiber mesh is just to give something for everything to stick to.
Yeah. But you can see, you can actually, rearrange the limbs once you get it set into your spot. If you wanted the limbs to droop down or something, you can, because it is wire. But I've infected a couple of 3 people here at the club, so they're building some too now. And but anyway, they're kind of fun. I spent the last 3 or 4 days sitting in the RV, and a couple of nights I sat there and did this, and made some more trees. So I'm going to try these with the sculpting foam. sculpting stuff. The pine tree, I just play with for fun. I have way too many of the other kind of pine trees are ready for us to do this on the area I'm working on back here in logging. But the pine tree was one I kind of did for fun. It's a carved balsa stick. This would represent a loblolly. Pine, these are individual wires that are glued in there, not like coal. I don't have branches on mine. Put the little pads in it and then did static grass on the branches. The trunk is brushed with glue, and then I sprinkled it with Woodland Scenic soil, which is a black package of soil. And these trees have a small square bark to them. And the soil looks very, very similar. If you look at the bark on it now, it looks like the square bark that the loblollies had. But then we've got another one. This is these little grass tufts, or these little weeds, are nothing more than jute rope. Cut them about that long, cut your little branch strings rope, dip one end of it in I use a half white glue and half water, dip the end in it, and that holds it. So let them set aside and dry really well. The secret then is to take each one of those and unwind it and just crumple the hell out of it. Just smash it around, crumple it up like that. Once you do that, spray it black from underneath, give you some shadows, spray a little brown on top, and then you can put some ground foam and some leaves on that. And it gives you a very realistic, very nice, different looking bush than what you would see with the foam stuff that we use a lot of the time. And so it gives you some nice variation in that. This is one right here, and it's just stiff as it can be because it's covered in glue. There's another one that just didn't get covered in leaves or ground foam back here. So I'll leave this up here if y'all want to see it.
Your next visit with the psychologist, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not too bad. I did it while I was camping, so a couple of Bloody Marys to go with it. It's not bad, yeah. But anyway, those are some trees.
Daryl, thank you very much.
28.
28.
Yeah. This was my other hobby, is I did twisted wire jewelry.
Okay.
With stones and stuff. My brothers have a complete stone manufacturing shop. Yes, sir. Yep. Somebody else have a shop? Anybody else?
Any other questions for Daryl?
Okay.
Okay, Daryl, thank you very much. Mike?
I just want to acknowledge the fact that we've got some amazingly talented modelers in this room.
Yeah, I mean,
It's just that our division is chock full of great modelers.
We had kind of a mini clinic here on several different areas this morning. So thank you very much. We'll take a 10-minute break. I got about 11:17. So let's make it 11:27. We come back here and we'll start, Joe, with your clinic, and we're all looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
People on the net.
I have a quick question for you.
Please stand. Okay, Joe, welcome to our Cowcatcher Division meeting. I want to talk about our clinician for a second. Joe is a nationally known modeler and founder and publisher and editor of Model Railroad Hobbyist. He has been in model railroading since the early 60s and is known for his HO Siskiyou line, which pioneered mushroom benchwork. The clinic he's doing is Make It Run Like a Dream, and I think this is something that ties into our overall themes. And Joe, take it over.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
Not very well. A little louder.
Okay, a little louder.
I can do that.
Let me see what I can do here on my audio settings here. Okay.
That's better now.
Okay, I'm trying to get this thing to go up a little bit more. How's that?
Perfect.
You're good.
Okay. And then do I have the ability to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yourself.
Okay.
At the bottom, you should see a little taskbar that says share screen.
Says host has disabled participant screen sharing. Won't let me do it.
Hang on, let me do something there.
You probably need to make me a co-host or something. Is that Jeff Palmer I see sitting in the front row wearing an MRH shirt?
Absolutely. I had to support my boss.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
Kelly, you're the host.
All right, looks good. So let's share. Okay, so you should be able to see my PowerPoint. Let me turn it into a real slideshow here. So how's that look?
Great.
Yep, fantastic.
Okay, so let's get started here. So run like a dream. So I'll go through kind of the what this is really here in a minute, and then I'll get into defining the dream, and then we'll cover what I call the great trifecta of operations, which is track work, rolling stock, and locomotives. Then I'll wrap it up, kind of pull it all together and wrap it up. So that's the agenda for today. So a little bit about me and my layout. I entered the hobby in 1967, started my Siskiyou line layout in 91, and been had monthly operating sessions since 98. Then I dismantled it in 2018. I can see I needed to update this slideshow because it's totally dismantled now. When we moved to Oklahoma about a year ago, the whole layout, rest of the layout had to come out. So it's gone now. And I'm starting a new, what we call TOMA layout, Siskiyou Line 2. TOMA stands for the one module approach. And we've been promoting that. And so maybe one of these times you guys can have me back and we'll talk about TOMA, the one module approach for home layouts. My layout models the 1980s SP and HO, and Siskiyou Line 2 is going to be the same exact theme as Siskiyou Line 1. It's Southern Oregon, and I have 40 plus locos, 300 plus cars. I use NCE, DCC, and when we had a good operating session, we have 16 operators optimum. So full disclosure here, this is also available as a book series. And this clinic is maybe 15 to 20% of what's in these books, 100 pages each. As you can see, is about every 2 years, September 2016, June 2018, then projected. It was originally going to be 2020, and we all know what happened in 2020. And unfortunately for us, that meant that we had to table all side projects and just focus on keeping our business alive while we went through all the lockdowns and everything. So finally was able to get started. And then we moved to Oklahoma, and that cost us another 9 months. So I'm finally back starting to work on the locomotive book now, and I'm hoping to get it out by year end. So, one other thing on the books, you guys, anybody who's listening might want to write this down. Write SAVE 20, save 20, SAVE 20, all lowercase. If you visit the store.mrhmag.com, with that code, you can save 20% on these books if you happen to want the books. And you can get them paperback or download. Okay, let's define the dream. And for me, ops is why I do the hobby. Everything else plays into operations. And one thing I like to say is ops is mostly visual. If you don't believe that, try running trains with your eyes closed. See how fun that is. Or how do you like running trains in hidden trackage? Isn't that fun? So ops is very visual. And then quality of run versus quantity of run. We'll talk more about that here in a minute because that kind of plays into all of this. One of the keys with getting good operations, make it run like a dream, is predictable performance. And there's a lot more to it than you might think. And preventative measures especially are helpful, meaning it never happens in the first place. Problem. And then I have what I call the Chester principle, and we'll talk more about that. It's sort of the antidote to Murphy's Law. Well, let's talk about this quality of run versus quantity of run. Most modelers think it's quantity of run that makes the hobby the most satisfying. In other words, bigger the better. Not necessarily so. It's quality of run that I've found makes the hobby the most satisfying. So what do we mean when we say quality of run? The derailments are rare, and there's this thing called ops amnesia, because I talk to people and they say, oh, I don't have a lot of derailments. And so then what happens is something will pop off the track, they'll put it back on, and then 10 minutes later, they'll forgot that they even had a derailment. So don't succumb to that. I'll talk about the antidote for that too. So the locos look real and run well. Rolling stock looks real and runs well, and scenery looks good. And these are in deliberate order. The most important for quality run is at the top, and the least important for quality run is at the bottom. The quantity of run, that's the bigger the better. Scope is often much larger, and the problem with big is you're tempted to cut corners, and then you got this whole problem, what I call pick any two, cheap, fast, good. You can get it cheap, but it's not cheap and fast, but it's not good. You can get it fast and good, but it's not cheap, and so on. However you mix and match those three, you can't get all three very easily. And also, it just ain't fun if the trains don't. Okay, so consistency, predictable performance, consistency is the key. And there's a gentleman by the name of Edward Deming, who MacArthur brought to Japan at the end of World War II to help get the Japanese economy back on its feet again. And he has this concept that he calls total quality, how to get a process so that it always has predictable results, see? And so he taught the Japanese those principles, and then of course we all know how that happened. What happened there is they basically whipped us in terms of overall quality, and we had to play catch up to try to get back to good quality products. So anyway, some of Deming's principles actually apply to this run like a dream concept. One of his principles is single source that you trust, because if you want predictable, then you don't want to be mixing and matching a lot of brands, because that'll create variability. And then you want to build in quality. So you use a predictable process and you avoid the whole fix it later concept. You want to do preventative. So we'll talk about that. So consistent components, like with track, locos, and rolling stock. Track, it's pretty easy to get single source. So you pick one kind of track from a vendor that you trust and stick with it. Rolling stock, with rolling stock, the things I'm looking at are the things that function. So I'm thinking couplers and wheels, okay? So you want to pick one vendor, coupler vendor, and stick with it. Don't mix and match couplers from different vendors or even different types of couplers. For instance, if you're going to do KD couplers, don't mix scale couplers with the number 5 slightly larger couplers. Pick one size and put all of that on all your rolling stock. And wheels, pick most people, I recommend metal wheel sets, and pick a vendor who makes good wheel sets that you like and put the same wheel sets on all your equipment. And locos is a little tougher to do, but at least the couplers, we can make them consistent. And you just kind of do the best you can there. So let's talk about this Chester principle. And I say this is where Murphy's Law has met its match. So you may have heard of Chester Good on Gunsmoke. Notice he's wearing a belt and suspenders. So the idea is built-in redundancy. You assume Murphy was right, and there's likely to be a problem. And Chester was one of these people that there was likely to be a problem. So he had a belt and suspenders. And redundancy. An example is you put stay alive in your locomotives, and you also put wipers on the wheels as well. So that's redundancy. So something's going to keep the loco moving. That's the idea. And then also some self-correcting things. And I have what I call a coupler trip pin hack. So on the left is the unaltered trip pin. And the idea is that the coupler may hit obstructions. And so take the trip pin and bend it slightly up on the end. so that when it hits the obstruction, it'll actually tend to go over the obstruction. By the way, a lot of what I'm recommending on couplers is actually in the KD instructions. Have you actually read the instructions and done what they say in those instructions? That's some of the best instructions in the hobby. You read them and do everything they say to do in there if you want really excellent coupler performance. So that's the Chester principle. So let's talk about track work. Radius, vertical curves, turnouts, bad track. I have pulled the track cleaning section out because I now have a separate clinic on track cleaning. So I won't touch on that very much. And then track shorts. I need to update my slides, I can see. So curve radius. The idea is to be informed here. The very, very first issue of Model Railroad Hobbyist in January 2009 has an article on powerful new curve radius insights that work for any scale. And I got these from the Layout Design SIG. And this picture here shows a 15-inch curve and 50-foot box cars. And notice the couplers don't even align on that. And so these curve radius guidelines take into account all kinds of things besides just whether or not the equipment will run on that. Because those 50-foot cars will run on a 15-inch curve, but they're worthless as far as being able to operate without a lot. In fact, I don't think you could get those couplers to couple. And if you did, the cars would pull each other off the track. Okay, so this curve radius guidelines is based on equipment length, so it applies in all scales. So the idea here is 2x of the radius. Some equipment may track reliably, especially truck mounted couplers, but it's generally considered pushing it. So a 40-foot box car in HO is about 6 inches long. So a 12-inch radius is 2x. So there we've got two 40-foot box cars on a 2x radius, 12 inches, and they will roll, but just barely. The flanges rub against the rail heads, and it's very noticeable friction. So 2.5x, most equipment will track reliably if everything is of similar length. So for a HO 40-foot box car, that's a 15-inch radius. And yes, the cars roll freely at that radius. 3x, all equipment should track reliably. Coupler performance is adequate if you alter the coupler to allow 50% car width swing. KD sells coupler boxes that you can mount that actually have that amount of swing. So that'll be an 18-inch radius in HO. And then 3.5x, the equipment will look less toy-like when viewed from the inside of the curve. So that would be a 21-inch radius. So here we have 40-foot cars sitting on a 21-inch radius, and you can see that they actually look pretty decent when viewed from the inside of the curve. 4x, equipment will look less toy-like when viewed from outside the curve. So there you see a 24-inch radius, which is 4x, and two 40-foot HO box cars. And yeah, it does look pretty decent. And then 5x, most reliable coupling on curves with body-mounted couplers and near-scale draft gear boxes. So a 5x curve in HO is 30 inches for 40-foot box cars. And you notice the couplers align great. They're almost like they're on straight track. So that's your guidelines. So if you're trying to figure out what curve radius you can cram into your space, then you need to look at these guidelines and you pick your desired compromise. You know, you could try 3x. The equipment's going to track fine, but you're going to have to fiddle with the couplers to get the cars to couple, and they're going to look toy-like. If you want 3.5x, and this is based on equipment length, okay? So like for 50-foot cars, it's obviously, you know, 50-foot car, I think is 7.5 inches in HO. If you go like 80-foot passenger cars and you want 5x, so you have reliable coupling on curves, you're going to have a yard on a curve that's going to switch those 80-foot cars or 80-foot, high cube cars or 80-foot flats with two 40-foot truck trailers on it. You can go 80-foot cars in HO, but if you want to not have to fiddle with the couplers, you're going to have to do 5x. So that's going to be 12 inches times 5. It's going to be a 60-inch curve is going to get the 5x. So see, now you know what you need to use if you want reliability. And so you just have to make your choice. Then we have vertical curves. Vertical curves is grade changes. And if you do an abrupt grade change, that can cause problems. So for example, picture on the right is level track, and couplers have been adjusted so that they are the same height. And then if you go then to an abrupt 2% grade, you've got like a 50% coupler misalignment, okay? And all kinds of problems you can have if you have abrupt grade changes. Local pilots may hit the railheads, and if it's a metal pilot, it can short. Couplers may uncouple, especially if they already have a coupler height mismatch to begin with. The trip pins may hit the ties, and diaphragms on passenger cars or locomotives can cause derailments. So those are some of the problems with not thinking through vertical curves properly. And so what's a good displacement? So I did some research, and here is displacement. I believe this is a 40-foot boxcar, 6 inches long. So you're going to double the number for displacement per foot. But basically, we've got level track, 30 thousandths displacement, go on the left, A and B. And then on the right, C is 60 thousandths displacement, and D is 120 thousandths displacement. That's an abrupt 2% grade. And the C is an abrupt 1% grade. And D is an abrupt 0.5% grade. So what I decided was the 60 thousandths displacement is acceptable, but that's an abrupt 1% grade over 6 inches. So if I do an abrupt 0.5% grade over 12 inches, then I still get the 60 thousandths displacement. And so that's what I decided I would do, is a 0.5% grade. So what you see is my longest car length is 87 feet over the coupler, or 12 inches in HO, and that's a 60 thousandth inch displacement. I missed the 0 down there. It's not 0.6. I need to fix that, which is a 0.5% grade change per foot. Okay, so the idea is, let me go back here. The idea is to build a gauge that I can use to check the vertical curves on my layout. And so you build this gauge. I built it out of 60 thousandths styrene, and I put a 60 thousandths red strip in the middle on one side and 60 thousandths strips on each end on the other side. And then what you do with this is you put it at the top of a summit, and as long as both ends touch over the summit and there's no gap, you're good. If the center touches, but you've got the gauge rocks on a summit, then your vertical curve's too steep. And then at the bottom of grades, you can flip it over, and if long as the both ends touch and the middle touches, you're good. But if you've got both ends touching and the middle has a gap, that means that your grade is, your vertical curve is too abrupt. And so the picture on the right, there's a summit right over that trestle on my old Siskiyou Line 1. And I put the gauge on there. And so since it was a summit, I've got the one on the top left there in the picture, which has the two ends need to touch and the middle needs to touch. And so when I did that, put it on this summit, that's what I got. So I did it right. Yay. Now, interestingly enough, I built my layout before I had this gauge. So I just got lucky on that one. I did have a couple other places on the layout where I had some gaps. So the vertical curve was too steep. All right. More track work. 99% of your derailments and track maintenance will be at turnouts. So turnouts are the key to your track work. The most complex wiring is there. The most costly part of the track is there. Most track work fails are at turnouts. And the goal is spot a turnout that's spot on the NMRA specs. And the dirty little secret is that most pre-manufactured turnouts are out of spec. And the thing is, you can take a turnout. Let's say you buy 3 turnouts, same brand. You can check all 3 turnouts and all 3 will be different. And that's because of mass production variation. So on the left is this particular Walther's DCC friendly code 83, and the check gauge was too small. The tab was in the middle of the frog instead of in the flangeway like it should be. And the Pico code 83, I find those Pico code 83 turnouts are better, are some of the best commercial turnouts. They're closer, tend to be closer. And if you get lucky, you may get one that's spot on. But the check gauge in this one was still too small. And then Central Valley sells a turnout kit that you use. It has slots for the flangeways for the base of the rail, and you put the rail down, glue the rail in place, or I use PC ties. Replace a few of the plastic ties with printed circuit board ties and solder the rails in place. And those rail slots are in perfect compliance with NMRA. In fact, the Central Valley turnout tie kit has the NMRA conformance seal. So that's the thing. It turns out it's only Central Valley tie kits and Fast Tracks jigs that have the compliance seal. Now the NMRA takes part of the blame for this non-compliant turnouts, and they admit that the specs were kind of confusing. And they have improved the specs to make it, they said they realized they need to express the specs in a way that a guy who's sitting there running the mass production machine understands the tolerances and understands what adjustments he needs to make to the machine to make sure the turnouts are in spec. So there's always hope that things will improve now that they've improved the specs. The only turnouts with the NMRA compliance sticker is Fast Tracks and Proto 87 stores. And they use this, Proto 87 uses the Central Valley tie strips. And at the bottom there, you can see my quote unquote hand-laid turnout on the Central Valley tie strips. And I replaced some of the plastic ties with printed circuit board ties. And I'm anal enough that I grind off the foil except where the tie plates would be. So call me anal. That's what I do. And so jig belt's the only commercial way to get a compliant turnout. Of course, you can lay your own turnouts and make sure they're in spec. But I developed what I call a poor man's jig method using the Central Valley turnout ties. And on the right, you can see one of those turnouts. Price has probably gone up now. I need to check the prices, but at the time that I made this slideshow, it was $8, and you get turnouts 5 through 9. That's great if you're an HO standard gauge, but if you're an HO narrow gauge or one of the other scales, not so nice. So you can always use the Fast Tracks jigs. And I'm using these turnouts on my Siskiyou line too. Okay, bad track work. What I found, there's a rule of thumb with bad track work. Don't fix it, just replace it. You can tweak the track over and over and over and over. And I had several places on my Siskiyou line too where I just tweaked the track, tweaked the track, tweaked the track, and it was never right. And so finally, I just bite the bullet and cut out that bad section of track and relay it, and that fixed it. And so it's like, wow, that took me an hour to do, and yet I've been anguishing over this track that I would tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak. And it would just never, the problem would never go away. So why didn't I just do this in the first place? You know, so long run, bite the bullet, spend the hour or whatever it takes to replace that track, and you'll be a lot happier. Track shorts. Most often the track shorts will correct turnouts, 99% of it. And with DCC, track shorts can shut down your entire layout unless you've got short protection blocks. You subdivide the layout up into separate blocks, sub blocks, and then the expensive way is to put 1156 auto taillight bulbs, although I heard recently that Congress is moving to ban incandescent bulbs entirely. So if they get their way, you won't be able to get these 1156 incandescent auto taillight bulbs at all. And LED equivalents don't work the same, don't do what we need. Better is to put a frog juicer from Fast Tracks or Tam Valley Depot on the turnout, or you can do dead frogs, but sound locos don't like dead frogs. Plus I've found, depending upon the loco that you're trying to run down the ladder, yard ladder, you can end up with a bunch of wheels at both ends of the loco, each on a dead frog. And so obviously if both ends of the loco are sitting on dead frogs, you're not going anywhere. Okay, so let's talk about rolling stock. And so it's important to have standards. And then, as I mentioned, the parts that matter are where the action is, right? So you got wheels and trucks and couplers. And then also let's talk about weight. And then there are some other considerations as well. So it's important to have standards and test all your equipment before you put it in service. And so I'll show you my Siskiyou example. And then another great example is the La Mesa Car Club Car Department. And if you do La Mesa Club, search for that in Google, you can find their video. It's like an hour long, where they talk about all the things that they test on the equipment. And they also have a document. And there are several, if you actually Google model railroad car standards or model railroad equipment standards, you can find several examples on the internet. And using those examples, I developed my Siskiyou line specs. So also build yourself a test track and then test everything. So here's my Siskiyou line standard. The whole standards checklist is on the right. I put every piece of equipment through this before it goes on the layout. And then a little close up on the left, some of the things. Check that the car has the proper size, all metal wheel sets per the capacity value on the wheel sets chart, which you can see over on the right. Wheel gauge checks out with an MRA gauge around the entire circumference of the wheels. What I do is I take a Sharpie and on the back of the wheel, put a dot. And then when I check the wheel gauge, I check it, rotate it 90 degrees, check it, rotate it 90 degrees, check it, rotate it 90 degrees, and check it. Believe it or not, you can end up with wheels that are tilted. So you can check, if you only check them in one place, and then you think everything's great, and you put those wheels in the car, and the car keeps derailing, and you don't know why. It's this mystery. What was this car jinxed or something? So you got to check them all the way around the circumference of the wheels. Next one, wheel tread does not fall into the no-go slot on the NMRA gauge and its proper code 110 width. Don't mix multiple codes, widths of wheels on the same layout. Remember that way, predictability, right? Minimize variation. I decided to actually, anytime a car derailed on the layout, I would take it off the layout and then document the derailment. And when I did that, I found that all the code 88 cars ended up off the layout eventually. And so it's, again, mixing. You think you can get away with it. Derailment, amnesia, you're not getting away with anything. If you want the flawless, zero derailment performance, you got to do, what is it, Scotty on Star Trek? Can it change the laws of physics? So next one, wheel treads are clean and free of any paint buildup or dirt. Car has solid all plastic trucks and has minimal side-to-side slop. We'll talk about that in a minute. On 6-wheel trucks, the middle wheel set has moderate side-to-side slop. And then the wheels spin true without wobble, and the truck side frames for at least 10 seconds. We'll talk more about that in a minute. All wheels are equally spaced from the truck side frames. You don't want wheels that are like this in the truck. You want them to be lined up. One wheel set per truck has a resistor mounted on it with pre-tested 10K ohms. I'm running signals on Siskiyou line 2, so that's a requirement for me. All metal couplers are height correct on both ends and don't sag. The up or down play max is 15 thousandths. Coupler trips, pins clear the gauge, and the pin has a slight upward bend to help it clear obstructions. And so it goes. So that's the standards. And believe it or not, all wheel sets are not created equal. Here is, you you want RP25 flanges, and here's wheel sets from a bunch of different vendors. And then down the bottom is a prototype, picture of prototype wheels. And so my question was, which wheel sets look the most like the prototype? Turns out Exact Rail, true to their name. Front and back look the most like prototype wheel sets. Tangent's a close second. Intermountain and Walthers are okay as well, the Proto 2000 wheel sets. But the ones that have a huge fail are Bowser and JB wheel sets. They're not even close to the prototype. So there you go. Amazing, huh? So minimal side-to-side slop, half a flange width. And let me see if I can get a video to play here. I'm going to try this. This is a YouTube video. And this is a video I made way back.
In my Run Like a Dream book series, I explore lesser known expert tricks for getting tip-top performance on your model room.
So how are we doing? Is that playing okay?
Got the audio but no video. Drag it onto the same screen with your presentation.
Ah, you're right. Let me do that. New share. We'll just say this. Okay. Does that work?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
One of the topics I'm exploring in book 2 of this
How's that? Is it playing?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
series, rolling stock, is wheel sets having too much side-to-side slop in the trucks. One wheel set can get offset from the other wheel set, causing the truck to dogleg down the track, angled as shown here, which leads to extremely derailment-prone trucks. So how much side-to-side slop is just right? Let me provide some examples. You want just a slight amount of slop, about a half a flange width, so the wheels roll.
Okay, this one's perfect. People always ask me, who made those trucks? This is who's the guys that make Rail Pro, Ring Electronics. Believe it or not, they sell trucks too. This is their trucks. These are some of the best trucks on the market.
Roll freely. The side-to-side slop in this truck is perfect. What about these trucks?
Okay, those are Athearn Athearn side frames and Intermountain wheel sets in the Athearn side frames. Pretty bad. So that's the one thing, even though you replace the wheel sets, you want to make sure you also have a truck side frame that matches the wheel set in terms of side-to-side play. Turns out the best combination I've found with Intermountain wheel sets is AccuRail trucks. And AccuRail will sell you empty truck side frames if you want. You just contact them and say, hey, I want to buy a bunch of your truck side frames.
Nope. Very sloppy. These need to be replaced. About these trucks, I'd say they are okay, but borderline.
Well, those are stock Athearn blue box.
If you see derailments, replace them. What about rollability? Ideally, you want the wheels to spin for at least 10 seconds with a finger flick. That's it. These spin great. 13 seconds. How well do Athearn blue box trucks do on a spin test?
Fail.
Not great. Only 5 seconds. How well do the first trucks we tested with ideal minimal side-to-side slop spin? Let's find out.
Remember, this is the Ring Engineering trucks. Some of the best trucks in the hobby.
Yep, they're still spinning. They're slowing down. Wow, 22 seconds. This proves minimal side-to-side slop does not have to hinder rollability.
Okay, so let me see if I can. Come on. We can do this. Okay, so there we go. We did that. Okay, so couplers. You want obviously the proper height with no sagging. Coupler lids and boxes attached with non-magnetic screws. I don't want stuff getting pulled around by any track magnets. Now, I don't happen to use the track magnets. I do uncoupling skewers, but there are, because of some different things I'm doing on the layout, I also have a situation where I might have magnets on the track. I'm using like magnets to control the finger flick turnout points. And there's a thing in Model Railroad Hobbyist a few months ago about how to use magnets to do finger flick turnout points. So basically no wires, there's nothing visible. It's all magnets under the points. But anyway, I don't want anything on the rolling stock that's magnetic. And then follow those instructions. Those cable instructions are gold. What's our question? Okay. Anyhow, I take a number 2 pencil and scrub the inside of the coupler box completely with that. So basically the entire inside of the coupler box is coated with graphite. So it's very slick. Then I also apply, apply graphite squirt some graphite into the coupler itself. And then finally, I take a number 4B pencil, graphite stick, and scrub the coupler jaw face. I also, if there's any flashing on the coupler jaw face, I file it, and if this is the jaw, you file it side to side, not up and down, side to side, because that's the direction the coupler face moves. So smooth that out, and then put the graphite, rub the graphite on the jaw, and your couplers, you can just kiss couple, and ours will just couple magically. It's wonderful. Okay, what about weight? There's a huge debate in the hobby about whether to, if the NMRA weight specs are makes the cars too heavy. Now, based on modern rollability standards, some people are suggesting overweighting cars up to 200%. So, I mean, what's the answer? The NEM and European standard is 2 ounces lighter than the NMRA, and the AMRA, which is Australian standard, is 1 ounce lighter than the NMRA. So, if the cars are too heavy, true, that's not as efficient, and that's usually the argument. I mean, come on, you're making the locomotives work harder, making the layout less efficient if you make the cars really hard, heavy. You've got steamers that don't pull well, then it makes sense to go lighter. Most model steam locomotives have terrible tractive pull. So making cars lighter makes a lot of sense. The La Mesa Club does an interesting thing. They lower the car weight if the car performance merits it. So when they check the cars, and if the car rolls down grades really well, if they do a tippability test, if the car passes the tippability test with flying colors, they'll reduce the car weight. So basically, they're only weighting the poor performance cars. And remember, the European and Australian standards are 1 to 2 inches, or 1 to 2 ounces lighter than the NMRA. But what about the whole overweighting thing? And so the efficiency argument doesn't carry a lot of weight with me. I mean, come on, it's a hobby, right? I'm not trying to run a for-profit model railroad. Pamplona overweights his trains, and I've been at his operating sessions, and I do have to agree, overweighting makes a subtle difference. It feels like the locomotives are really working to get the tonnage over the road, and it just feels more real. And it's very subtle, but I'm a fan of overweighting. But give it a try, see what you think. And so my thoughts is, why not make those short trains actually need 3 diesels and helpers to get over the railroad? And then the whole run like a dream concept is a richer operating experience, not winning a medal for making your layout more efficient. So I say just give overweighting a try and see what you think. I'm a big fan of it. It really makes a difference. Very subtle though. Okay. Methods for adding weight. You can use pennies. Some people don't like defacing currency, but if that's not a problem for you, pennies are a good cheap way to add weight. Steel wheel weights. They don't sell lead wheel weights anymore. I think those have been outlawed in most states. So you can get the steel ones and put those inside the car. Lead sheet, lead weights. Some people use low temperature metals like Cerobend, but the problem is those often contain cadmium, which is lethal if you happen to get it in your system. You need to be real careful. And then there's tungsten powder / tungsten shot. Tungsten, the element tungsten is 30% heavier than lead, believe it or not. So if you take 2 parts tungsten shot plus some tungsten powder and 1 part plaster, mix that up, you can make a slurry that you can then basically put in the nooks and crannies of the underside of your car. And you can see the covered hopper on the right has that done in it. And because it's heavier than lead, it doesn't take too much to add a lot of extra weight to your car. And the tungsten powder, tungsten's inert. You get tungsten in your system, it doesn't bother you at all. So it's very safe as well. So some other considerations: car body tilt. You can get this plastic protractor gauge, and you can actually take the car, and this is the La Mesa Club does. Take the car and tip it. You start at 45 degrees, tip the car to 45 degrees and release it. Does it overcorrect and fall back on its side the other way? Or does it just wobble and then eventually right itself? So what you want is a car that you can pull all the way over to 45 degrees, release it. It will not overcorrect. It'll wobble and then finally come to a stop. So that's a car that's a lot more derailment prone. What you can find is some things that can crop up that can cause a problem with that is you can actually have a car body that's warped. And so using this protractor gauge, you can actually set it at 90 degrees and check all 4 corners of your car. And if you get what the La Mesa Club does, is if any end of any of the corners of the cars are more than 1% off of vertical, the frame's warped. And that'll be a car that will be derailment prone. And so the only answer is to replace the car. It's very difficult to fix. Also, car body shimmy. You may see this where the cars are kind of doing this going down the track. There are things you can do to fix that by tightening the wheel, the truck screws, certain ways. You can also put shims between the top of the truck and the bottom of the car body to eliminate that shimmy. And then some other things that's important is bulletproof details. I hate finding stirrup steps and brake wheels on the layout after an op session. And so anything you can do to make those more robust. Here's an interesting trick. It turns out that Katie makes couplers that have a coupler shank that's a 1/4 inch long instead of 9/32. And if that matters to you, then, you know, like a 20-car train, you can save a couple of inches in the length of the train. So now you can make your passing siding shorter. And then also there's the whole question of braking cars on a grade. Unfortunately, it's often necessary, or it would be a lot easier in a track plan if you can actually put a town on a grade and put industrial spurs on a grade. Well, now you need a way to keep those cars from rolling away. And so there's lots of different methods you can use. You can put a re-railer sort of thing on the track. You actually get things you put on the track to hold the cars in place. So people have done tortoise with a wire coming up through. There's just a lot of different things you can do there. So that's also something to think about. Got to break those cars on a grade. It makes it, then you can cheat and actually have the town on a grade. Locomotives. That's I'm currently working on that book, and I'm making heavy use of the Chester principle in here. Remember, that's belt and suspenders. That's things you can do to prevent problems from happening in the first place. And so the chapters in the book, I'm talking about testing, break-in, lubrication, contact and electrical, decoders and programming, and different speed matching techniques, good ways to do lighting in the locos, local sound, and other considerations, traction improvement and more realistic ops with momentum and braking. Traction improvements. Did you know there's a way, now this is, you have to use this when you're building your layout. But there is a way to dramatically improve the traction of your locomotives. This would be really good for steamers. Dramatically improve the traction of your locomotives by putting stainless steel plates under the track, and actually putting magnets on the bottom of your locomotives. And there's a company, DCC Concepts, that sells that product, and they demonstrate the difference, and it's dramatic. And so that's a way you don't have to use bullfrog snot or traction tires or anything. You'll dramatically increase this tractive effort, the amount of cars that steam locomotives can pull. And I'm on Siskiyou Line 2, I'm doing that on my grades. So that way the locos will pull much better. Test track. Here's a test track that I built, and I'm going to talk about, and I talk about this in the book. The book is going to be 100 pages altogether, and I've got about 42 pages of it done already. Hope to release another sneak peek here shortly. Anybody who pre-orders the book, I put them on a list and send them a sneak peek of the book as it's being written, and I encourage people to give me feedback. The first two books were made a lot better because people said, are you going to talk about this? You're going to talk about that? Oh, good idea. So that's, the sneak peeks are really helpful for me too. I have rollers on this test track, so I can actually put a locomotive and, run it full speed, forwards, backwards, do break-in. I'm using an NCE power cab for this. I also have a computer interface so I can do JMRI. I use ESU sound decoders in my locomotives. And so I'm using the local programmer, and I also have ESU's decoder tester, which is really helpful. So think about test track for DCC. Then there are performance tuning things, like when locomotives buck when going downhill. So what you want to do there is reduce the worm slop using thrust washers so that the worm doesn't jerk back and forth. Turns out Katie red gray fiber washers work great for that because they're different thicknesses. Or you can make your own using some punches from PTFE, which is Teflon. And then I mentioned the sneak peeks. And one of the things I'm trying to do with all these books is I'm covering N to O scale. I don't want to just be HO centric. And also I'm including in the local book, I'm looking at both steam and diesel locomotives. So I'm not looking at just any specific era. I'm also trying to cover all the scales. So, let's pull this all together. Which would you prefer? Layout A has no scenery, minimal weathering, the track's unballasted, but the locos have all been tuned. You get 0 derailments and minimal shorts. Layout B has great scenery, everything's weathered, highly realistic track. It's in all the magazines because it's such a beautiful layout. But the locos basically are out of the box as far as the mechanism. They may be weathered nicely, but nothing's been done to make the locomotives run well at all. The layout has frequent derailments and frequent shorts. Which layout? A or B?
A.
Most people say A. Layout B, though, is the one that's going to be in all the magazines. Go figure. And that's it.
Yeah, how about questions? Joe, can you take some questions?
Sure, questions, please.
Questions?
Hey, Joe?
Yes.
What wheel set did manufacturer, did you say Ring Electronics?
Ring Engineering.
R-I-N-G.
RING. They sell the Rail Pro system, which is an alternative to DCC. It's got sound in it as well, and they have a nice handheld that's got a nice big knob and touch screen. There's a sort of a cadre of modelers who really are fans of Rail Pro's system, but it's a proprietary system. It's not DCC.
Okay. I thought you were saying that was the wheel set or the
Yes.
wheel manufacturer that you like.
They sell really great trucks. Unfortunately, they only sell modern trucks, meaning they don't sell the old rag packed square journal box trucks. So what I use on my layout is I actually, although the ring trucks are great, I use Intermountain wheel sets and AccuRail side frames.
Okay.
Because those fit really well. They're not a lot of slop, and AccuRail sells everything. You can get roller bearing, you can get the rag packed journal boxes, everything. They have a lot of variety of truck side frames you get. And as I mentioned, contact Intermountain and they will sell it, or AccuRail, excuse me, contact AccuRail and they will sell you just the trucks minus the wheels if you want.
What kind of luck have you had with the Katie trucks?
I don't like the Katie trucks at all. I don't like the Katie wheel sets. They're sintered metal on plastic axles. And I found that plastic to plastic, I use plastic side frames, truck side frames. Plastic to plastic doesn't roll well. You do a stability test on those KDs. If you put the KD wheel sets in any other truck side frame, it's plastic. Do a spin test, it'll fail the spin test. And do a spin test on the KD trucks and see how they perform. I don't like sprung trucks either. I like solid side frames. I find that the sprung feature adds more variability to the truck performance. And I like the solid side frames the best.
Okay.
So,
thanks, Joe.
Okay. Any other questions?
David? Hi, Joe, I'm David, and operate in normal scale. Any of this apply to M scale?
Most of it, yes. So, for instance, the single sourcing, use the same couplers throughout, which would be the microtrains couplers throughout. Use the same wheel sets, again, put metal wheel sets in your trucks and use the same wheel sets across your entire fleet. Again, the same couplers in your locomotives. So yeah, anything you can do to make that consistent. Of course, the track work stuff applies regardless of scale. And then the curve guidelines, if you're in the stage where you're designing your layout, if your layout's already built, you're past that stage. But if you're designing a layout, follow the curve guidelines. They work for N scale just as well as they work for HO or O scale, or S or TT or Z. Hopefully that answers your question.
Sure. Any other questions for Joe? Chance. Okay, Joe, thank you very much. It was very informative. Great.